The bizarre history of Henry VIII. Did you know that one of England's most famous kings spent most of his life trying to get a son, but ended up changing the course of history instead? Henry VIII was not born to become the monster of legend or the man with 6 wives. He was once a charming prince full of music, poetry, and promise. But the crown has a strange way of reshaping souls. And for Henry, power, pride, and the hunger for legacy turned a golden boy into a storm that would rip England apart. Let's step back to the year 1491. The Tudor dynasty was still new. Henry's father, Henry VII, had won the crown by force after decades of civil war. England was tired of bloodshed. Peace was fragile. The young Henry, the second son, was not expected to rule. He was bright, athletic, and deeply religious. People said his smile could warm a room and his laugh could make a courtier forget fear. He studied Latin, theology, and music. He could ride a horse like a warrior and sing like a priest. A prince made for pleasure, not power, but fate had other plans. His elder brother, Arthur, the true heir, died suddenly in 1502 at just 15. The kingdom went silent. Henry, now 10 years old, became the only hope for the Tudor line. The weight of England fell on his small shoulders. His father grew protective and cold. Every step the boy took was watched, every word measured. Henry VII feared rebellion, so he locked his son in a life of isolation, shielding the fragile dynasty from risk. In 1509, the old king died. Henry VIII, just 17, was crowned king. The bells of London rang for days. People filled the streets shouting his name. They saw in him a new dawn after years of suspicion and control. Henry was everything his father was not: youthful, generous, handsome, and full of joy. The new king promised peace and prosperity. And he had a queen by his side, Catherine of Aragon, the Spanish princess who had once been betrothed to his late brother. Their marriage began with laughter and light. Catherine was wise and kind, and Henry adored her. Together, they were seen as England's golden couple. He called her the most beautiful woman in the world. She, in turn, devoted herself to him and to England. Henry trusted her advice and admired her dignity. He was a king who loved tournaments, music, and feasts. He was the shining image of Renaissance royalty. But behind the joy, shadows gathered. Henry wanted a strong male heir to secure the Tudor line. It became his obsession. The fear of losing everything haunted him. Catherine gave birth several times, but only one child survived Mary. Henry adored her, but deep inside he felt cursed. A daughter, he believed, could not hold the throne. He needed a boy. And as the years passed, his faith began to twist into doubt. The young king, who once rode through London, smiling, now turned inward. The court buzzed with whispers. Catherine grew older. Her beauty faded under years of loss and prayer. And then came Anne Boleyn. She was different, sharp, witty, mysterious. Unlike other women, she refused to become Henry's mistress. She wanted a crown, not a kiss. Her dark eyes challenged him. Her words fascinated him. Soon, Henry's heart and his pride were caught in her snare. Let's float over to another royal disaster. Henry began to believe his marriage to Catherine was cursed by God because she had been his brother's widow. He found a verse in the Bible that seemed to prove it. Asterisk. If a man shall take his brother's wife, it is an unclean thing. They shall be childless. Asterisk to Henry. This was divine confirmation. But Catherine refused to accept it. She said their marriage was lawful, that the Pope himself had blessed it. Henry sent petitions to Rome. He demanded an annulment. But the Pope, caught between England and powerful Spain, hesitated. Years passed. Henry grew impatient. His advisors warned him that the Pope would never agree. So Henry made a choice that would shake the Christian world. He broke from Rome. It began quietly with secret letters and new ideas. Men like Thomas Cranmer and Thomas Cromwell whispered of reform. They spoke of kings who ruled by divine right, not papal permission. Henry listened. And soon, he saw a way to free himself, not just from Catherine, but from the Pope's grip. The Church of England was born. Henry declared himself its supreme head. Now, he answered to no one but God. The break from Rome was not just a political act. It was a spiritual earthquake. Monks were cast out. Monasteries were closed. Ancient relics were seized. Gold and land flowed into the royal treasury. England's old faith was being dismantled piece by piece. And at the heart of it all stood a man who believed that God had chosen him to reshape the world. In 1533, Henry secretly married Anne Boleyn. She was crowned queen amid cheers and music. Henry believed at last his prayers had been answered. Anne was pregnant. But destiny had a cruel sense of humor. The child was not a boy. It was a girl, Elizabeth. Henry tried to smile, to believe that a son would come next time. But doubt began to creep in again. Anne's charm began to fade. She was clever but proud, and she had made many enemies. The court turned against her. Henry's gaze wandered once more. He began to see Anne not as a gift, but as a curse. Soon, rumors spread treason, adultery, witchcraft. Whether true or false, they sealed her fate. In 1536, Anne Boleyn was executed by sword. The king who had defied the Pope for love now stood unmoved as her body fell. Let's drift toward another turning point. That same year, Catherine of Aragon died in isolation and Henry married Jane Seymour. She was gentle and quiet, the opposite of Anne. Henry called her his true love. At last, she gave him what he wanted, a son, Edward. But joy came with sorrow. Jane died soon after childbirth. Henry wore black for months. He said she was the only wife he had ever truly loved. The young king who once danced at feasts now grew heavy and suspicious. His body swelled. His leg became infected, never healing. The pain made him bitter. He searched again for comfort in marriage, but each new union ended in embarrassment or death. Anne of Cleves, his fourth wife, was chosen from a portrait, but when she arrived, Henry found her ugly and refused to touch her. He called her the Mare of Flanders. Their marriage was annulled within months. Then came Catherine Howard, a teenager full of laughter. She gave him back a glimpse of youth, but her flirtations proved fatal. She was accused of adultery and executed like Anne. Henry watched her die, cold and expressionless. His final wife, Catherine Parr, managed to survive him through intelligence and patience. By the end of his reign, Henry VIII was unrecognizable. The once radiant prince was now a bloated, scarred figure carried on a chair through his palace halls. His eyes, once bright, were dulled by regret and pain. Yet he still saw himself as God's chosen ruler, the man who had brought England back to truth. When Henry died in 1547, he left behind a kingdom transformed. The monasteries were gone. The church was forever changed. His son Edward was too young to rule, and his daughters Mary and Elizabeth would soon fight over the legacy he left behind. But perhaps the strangest part of Henry's story is not his marriages or his wars. It's how one man's hunger for a son gave birth to a new nation. His daughter Elizabeth would go on to rule as one of England's greatest monarchs, shaping an empire her father could never have imagined. Let us drift to the next chapter, where Henry's ghost lingers in the hearts of those who followed him. Did you know that after Henry VIII died, England was left standing between two worlds? One foot in the old faith, one in the new. The Reformation had broken the country's spine, and now everyone waited to see which direction it would fall. Henry's will named his young son, Edward, as heir. The boy was only 9 years old. Frail, intelligent, and deeply Protestant, he became king in name. But power slipped quickly into the hands of men who ruled through him. Let's glide gently into this uncertain moment. The court was now a place of shadows. Nobles whispered of power. Religious factions fought quietly behind closed doors. Some wanted to continue Henry's break with Rome. Others longed to return to the old ways. England, still bleeding from reform, faced a question it had never answered. What did it mean to be truly English now that Rome was gone? Edward VI, though young, was not blind. He had been raised to believe his father's reforms were divine truth. Under his reign, church services changed. Latin prayers disappeared. The English Bible became the heart of worship. Statues of saints were torn down. Even the music that once filled cathedrals fell silent. The country was reshaped again, this time more deeply than before. But Edward's health was poor. He coughed blood. His face grew pale. Physicians prayed, but nothing helped. The dream of a long Protestant reign began to crumble. As the boy king lay dying in 1553, a question burned through every hall in London: who would rule next? His half-sister Mary was the rightful heir by law, but she was a Catholic. For Protestant advisors, that meant danger. So they made a desperate move. They placed Lady Jane Grey, a quiet and scholarly teenager, on the throne. She was Edward's cousin and a Protestant. For 9 days, she was called Queen. But the people did not rise for her. The nation turned to Mary, Henry's eldest daughter, who claimed her father's legacy with fire in her heart. Jane was deposed and later executed, a victim of others' ambition. Now let's float forward into Mary's reign. History remembers her as Bloody Mary, but her story is tangled with grief. She had watched her mother, Catherine of Aragon, cast aside and die alone. She had seen her faith mocked and her legitimacy questioned. When she finally became queen, she saw herself not as a tyrant, but as God's avenger. Her mission was to restore England to the true faith. At first, people celebrated her. The daughter of Catherine had returned. But joy turned to fear when she began burning Protestants at the stake. Men and women who refused to renounce the new church were executed publicly. The smell of smoke drifted through towns. The same England that had once cheered for reform now shuddered at the sight of its cost. Mary's marriage to Philip of Spain only deepened resentment. He was foreign and cold, and their union brought no heir. When Mary died in 1558, the nation sighed with relief and uncertainty. And so the crown passed to Elizabeth, the daughter of Anne Boleyn, the very woman for whom Henry had torn England from Rome. It is one of history's strange ironies that the daughter of a woman he had executed would go on to become one of the greatest rulers the world has ever known. Elizabeth's reign began under the shadow of her father's sins, yet she would use his legacy to build something entirely new. Let's drift now to that moment of her coronation. The morning of January 15, 1559 dawned cold and bright. Elizabeth walked through London in a gown of gold and white, her hair loose like a halo. Crowds filled the streets, cheering. For the first time in years, hope felt real again. The young queen smiled and waved, aware that her every step carried the weight of her father's ghost. Elizabeth understood the dangers of choosing sides. She had seen what religious extremes could do. So she crafted a middle path, a church that was Protestant in faith but gentle in ceremony. It was a delicate balance, one that would define English identity for generations. The Church of England, born from Henry's desperation, was now molded into something stable under his daughter's careful hand. But Elizabeth also carried the burden of her mother's memory. Anne Boleyn's execution haunted her. Few dared speak her mother's name at court, yet Elizabeth never forgot. She wore a ring with 2 portraits hidden inside her own and Anne's. When she looked at it, she remembered the woman who had died for her to exist. Perhaps it was her way of forgiving the father who had taken so much from both of them. Let's glide deeper into the years of Elizabeth's rule. England became a power unlike any before. Explorers sailed the oceans in the name of the crown. Theaters filled with new words and laughter. A small island nation began to see itself as an empire in waiting. But beneath the glory lay a silent echo of Henry VIII's rule, the endless question of succession. Elizabeth never married. She claimed to be wedded to her people. Few believed she could not bear to repeat the cycle of betrayal and loss she had inherited. As her reign continued, portraits of Henry VIII hung in every royal chamber. The image of the broad-shouldered king, hand on hip, eyes fierce, became a symbol of English pride. Yet those who looked closer saw something else. The painter Hans Holbein had captured not just power, but arrogance, a warning carved into the brushstrokes. By the time Elizabeth grew old, the England Henry had once ruled was gone. The monasteries were memories. The Pope's authority was a ghost. A new English identity had been born, not by design but by accident, by one man's obsession with a son that never lived long enough to rule. Let's drift gently toward the final turn. When Elizabeth died in 1603, the Tudor line ended. There was no direct heir. The crown passed to James VI of Scotland, uniting 2 kingdoms that had once been enemies. The age of Tudors was over, but their echo lingered in every chapel, every law, every song sung in the language of Shakespeare and Scripture. And yet, Henry VIII's story refuses to fade. His image still dominates paintings. His decisions still ripple through British life. Even today, the Church of England stands as his most lasting creation, a monument to personal desire reshaped into national destiny. Perhaps that is the strangest twist of all. The man who broke faith to gain control never found peace himself. He lost friends, wives, and even his own soul to the pursuit of something he could never hold, a perfect legacy. Did you know that centuries after Henry VIII's death, his presence still lingers like a shadow over English history? His name alone sparks both fascination and unease. Kings and queens have come and gone, yet few have carved their image so deeply into the nation's soul. Henry wanted to be remembered as a strong ruler, a defender of faith, a man chosen by God. What he became instead was a symbol of pride, contradiction, and power gone too far. Let's drift into the decades after his passing. England had changed beyond recognition. The land once dotted with monasteries and abbeys now stood stripped and silent. Vast estates were handed to nobles loyal to the crown. Ancient libraries were burned. Art and relics disappeared into smoke. Yet through this destruction, something new began to grow: a sense of independence. The English church was no longer bound by Rome. The monarch was now the living symbol of both faith and state. And that idea, born from Henry's stubbornness, would shape the identity of an empire. When historians of later centuries wrote of him, they struggled to decide what he truly was. Was Henry a tyrant or a visionary, a reformer or a destroyer? His actions brought both progress and ruin. The monasteries he closed had cared for the poor. The church he created gave power to kings but weakened the soul of religion. His personal desires had rewritten the map of faith. Let's float closer to the man behind the myth. In his private letters, we glimpse the boy he once was, the musician, the poet, the dreamer who loved hunting, laughter, and beauty. He wrote songs, some still sung in old English courts. He played the lute, composed love poems, and believed in chivalry. Yet those gentle gifts slowly vanished under the crown's weight. The pain of his leg wounds, the guilt of broken vows, and the fear of losing control hardened him. The laughter that once charmed courtiers turned into outbursts of rage. Those who served him learned to fear his moods. One wrong word could lead to exile or execution. His friend Thomas More, who had once been his trusted advisor, refused to accept Henry as head of the church. For that, he lost his head. Henry called it justice. The world called it tyranny. Still, he was not a simple villain. In his mind, he was defending truth. Every act of cruelty, he believed, served a divine purpose. To Henry, his will was God's will. That belief gave him strength and destroyed everything around him. Let's glide now toward the legacy he left to art and image. The painter Hans Holbein captured Henry in a way no one had before. Standing tall, legs apart, eyes fixed forward, hands on hips, a pose that still dominates history books. No other king of that time looked so boldly into the viewer's gaze. It was the image of command. The message was clear: this man ruled by his own right. That portrait became the foundation of royal power in England. Every monarch who came after borrowed a piece of that stance. In the centuries that followed, writers and playwrights turned Henry's life into legend. Shakespeare's play Henry VIII painted him as both majestic and flawed. Later, painters and historians softened his cruelty, seeing him as a man of destiny rather than a destroyer. But in truth, Henry was both the builder and the breaker, the father of a new nation and the architect of countless personal tragedies. Let's float forward into the modern world. Tourists still walk through the grand halls of Hampton Court Palace, where Henry once laughed with Anne Boleyn and mourned Jane Seymour. His presence feels alive there. The ceilings bear his initials. The tapestries whisper of triumphs and fears. Even his ghost is said to roam the corridors at night, limping through the shadows, still searching for peace he never found. What makes Henry VIII so unforgettable is not just what he did, but why he did it. His story is not of a monster, but of a man who could not accept limitation. He wanted everything: love, legacy, control, and eternal memory. When one dream crumbled, he built another on its ruins. He never stopped building, never stopped breaking. Let's glide to the story's quietest truth. The son he longed for, Edward, died young. The daughter he dismissed, Elizabeth, gave England its golden age. She brought the stability, strength, and glory he had always wanted for himself. Through her, his bloodline fulfilled the destiny he could never complete. Perhaps that is history's greatest irony. The king who broke his world apart in search of a son found immortality in a daughter. Today, scholars continue to debate him. Some see him as a genius of statecraft, others as a man driven by insecurity and fear. But beyond all interpretation, one fact remains clear: Henry VIII changed everything. His choices reshaped faith, government, marriage, and monarchy. The echoes of his decisions still ring through cathedrals and parliaments, through the hymns of English churches, through the royal crown itself. And so, when we speak his name, we are not just recalling a king. We are recalling the beginning of modern England. The world before Henry VIII belonged to the medieval past. The world after him belonged to the age of nations. His story reminds us that history is not built by saints, but by flawed humans chasing impossible dreams. Let's drift gently to the end, where myth and memory merge. Imagine him now standing in his great hall, surrounded by silence. The court is gone. The music has faded. The banners of victory hang motionless. He looks toward a distant future he cannot see, yet somehow knows he has already shaped it. The bizarre history of Henry VIII is not simply the tale of a cruel monarch or a man of excess. It is the story of transformation, how one person's ambition can reshape the fate of millions, how a single crown can change the heartbeat of an empire, and how even in destruction, legacy endures. And perhaps as the candlelight flickers against the stone walls of his empty palace, the ghost of Henry still hums the tune of the songs he once wrote soft, haunting and full of the pride that made him both king and cautionary legend.